The morning started like any other Tuesday for Rachel Torres. She'd been working as a park ranger for 7 years now, and the routine had become second nature. Check the weather reports, inspect the trails, make sure hikers were following safety guidelines. Nothing too exciting, but that's exactly how she liked it. A quiet life was a good life as far as she was concerned, but that Tuesday afternoon everything changed. Rachel was driving her ranger truck along the mountain pass, windows down, radio playing softly. The summer had been particularly dry, and everyone in the department had been on edge about fire risks. Still, when she first noticed the thin column of smoke rising from the valley below, she thought maybe someone was just having a barbecue where they shouldn't be. Then she saw the orange glow. Her heart dropped. This wasn't a small campfire someone forgot to put out. This was big. Really big. She grabbed her radio and called it in, her voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to pump through her veins. Dispatch confirmed what she already knew. Wildfire, fast-moving, residential area threatened. Rachel hit the gas and headed toward the smoke. As she got closer, she could see families rushing out of their homes, cars packed with whatever they could grab in those precious few minutes. The air was thick and gray, burning her throat with each breath. Fire trucks were already on scene, but the flames were spreading faster than anyone expected. The wind wasn't helping either, pushing the fire right toward the cluster of houses at the edge of the forest. She parked her truck and jumped out, immediately moving to help direct people away from the danger zone. An older man was struggling to load his dog into his car. A woman was screaming for her husband who'd gone back inside for their photo albums. Chaos. Pure chaos. Rachel had trained for this. But training never quite prepared you for the real thing. That's when she heard it. A child's voice. High-pitched, terrified, crying for help. Rachel's head snapped toward the sound. One of the houses about 50 yards away was already halfway engulfed in flames. The front porch was burning and smoke was pouring out of the windows. But that cry, it was coming from inside. She didn't think, didn't stop to calculate the risks or wait for backup. Her legs just moved, carrying her toward that house while every instinct screamed at her to run the other way. A firefighter yelled something at her, but she couldn't hear it over the roar of the fire and the pounding in her ears. The heat hit her like a physical wall when she reached the porch. The front door was partially open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Rachel pulled her jacket up over her mouth and nose and pushed inside. The smoke was overwhelming. Thick and black, it burned her eyes and made it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. She dropped low, remembering her training. Smoke rises, stay low. She crawled forward, calling out, "Hello? Where are you?" "Keep talking to me," a small voice answered, weak and scared. "Here, I'm here." Rachel followed the sound, her hands feeling along the floor. The heat was intense, and she could hear the fire crackling somewhere to her right, consuming everything in its path. Her lungs were screaming for clean air, but she pushed forward. Then her hand touched fabric. Small fabric. A child's shirt. In the dim, smoky chaos, Rachel could barely make out the little girl huddled against the wall. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, tears streaming down her soot-covered face. The girl was frozen in fear, unable to move. "I've got you," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice calm even though her heart was racing. "We're going to get out of here, okay? I need you to hold on to me really tight." She scooped the girl up in her arms, and the child wrapped her small arms around Rachel's neck in a death grip. Rachel turned back the way she'd come, but the smoke was even thicker now. For a moment, genuine fear gripped her. What if she couldn't find the way out? What if they both got trapped? No, not happening. Focus. She stayed low, moving as fast as she could while carrying the girl. The heat was unbearable now. She could feel it on her back, on her neck. The fire was getting closer. Her eyes were watering so badly she could barely see, but then, there a slightly lighter patch in the smoke. The door. Rachel burst through onto the porch just as part of the roof caved in behind them. She stumbled down the steps, and suddenly there were hands grabbing her, pulling them both away from the house. Firefighters surrounded them, guiding them to safety. She set the girl down on the grass, both of them coughing and gasping for clean air. A paramedic rushed over with oxygen masks, but Rachel waved them off, making sure the girl got one first. The child was crying now, really crying, clutching at Rachel's burned uniform. "You're okay," Rachel said softly, even though her voice was hoarse. "You're safe now. Where are your parents?" Before the girl could answer, a woman's scream cut through the air. A young couple came running, the woman's face twisted in anguish and relief. They dropped to their knees beside their daughter, pulling her into their arms, sobbing. Lily. Oh my God, Lily. So that was her name. Lily. Rachel stood up slowly, her legs shaky. That's when she noticed the news helicopter overhead. And the cameras, several of them actually, all pointed in her direction. One of the firefighters clapped her on the shoulder. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen, he said. But he was smiling. You okay? Rachel nodded, still trying to catch her breath. She looked down at her uniform. It was singed in several places, covered in ash and soot. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was starting to wear off. Lily's parents stood up, the father still holding his daughter, and turned to Rachel. The mother grabbed Rachel's hands, tears streaming down her face. You saved her. You saved our baby. How can we ever thank you? Rachel shook her head. No need to thank me. I'm just glad she's okay. But the mother wasn't listening. She pulled Rachel into a tight hug, and Rachel awkwardly patted her back, uncomfortable with the attention. More people were gathering now, watching, pointing. Someone was recording on their phone. A reporter pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. Ma'am, can we get your name? That was an incredible rescue. How does it feel to be a hero? Rachel stepped back, feeling trapped. I'm not a hero. I just did my job. Please, excuse me. She turned and walked quickly back to her truck, ignoring the calls from the reporters. Her hands were still shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. The image of little Lily, frozen in fear in that burning house, kept playing in her mind. She'd saved a child's life today. That should feel good, right? It did feel good. But something else was gnawing at her, a familiar anxiety creeping up her spine. The cameras, the attention. Her face was going to be all over the news. Rachel pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment. Should she call someone? Her supervisor had already radioed that she should take the rest of the day off, get checked out by the medics, rest. But that wasn't what worried her. What worried her was what would happen next. Because Rachel had spent the last 7 years building a quiet, anonymous life, and in just a few minutes she'd thrown all of that away. She started the engine and drove away from the scene, watching the smoke in her rearview mirror. The fire was still burning, but it was under control now. The houses would be damaged, some destroyed, but the people were safe. That's what mattered. That's all that should matter. So why did she feel like she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life? Rachel knew something was wrong the moment she opened her phone the next morning. 53 missed calls. Over 200 text messages. Her social media accounts, which she barely used anyway, were flooded with notifications. Her heart sank as she scrolled through the messages. Most were from people she didn't know. Strangers. All of them talking about the same thing. The video. Someone had recorded the whole rescue. Not just recorded it, but captured it in perfect, dramatic detail. The footage showed her running into the burning house, disappearing into the smoke. Then, minutes that probably felt like hours to everyone watching, she emerged with little Lily in her arms. The image was striking, almost cinematic. Her uniform was smoking, her face covered in ash, but she was carrying that little girl like nothing else in the world mattered. The video had gone viral overnight. Millions of views, shared across every platform. News stations had picked it up. Morning shows were talking about it. Someone had even made it into a trending hashtag. Brave Ranger saves girl from wildfire. Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the screen, feeling sick to her stomach. This was exactly what she didn't want. Her supervisor called around 8. Torres, you doing okay? Listen, the chief wants to see you this afternoon. The mayor's office called. They want to do some kind of ceremony. Recognition thing. The family wants to thank you properly. This is big, Rachel. Really big. Rachel closed her eyes. Do I have to? Have to? Rachel, you're a hero. People want to celebrate that. You saved a child's life. I know, but I'm not comfortable with all this attention. Can't we just skip the ceremony? There was a pause on the other end. Look, I get that you're humble and all, but this is good for the department. Good for the community. Just smile, shake some hands, and it'll be over before you know it. That's what she was afraid of. It wouldn't be over. It never would be. The ceremony was scheduled for Saturday, 4 days away. Rachel spent those days trying to avoid the media circus that had set up outside her apartment building. Reporters camped out, waiting for her to leave so they could ask questions. She started using the back exit. Her co-workers thought she was being modest. Her neighbors thought she was shy. Nobody understood the real reason she wanted to disappear. Saturday arrived too quickly. The ceremony was held at the town hall, and it seemed like half the town showed up. Rachel stood on the stage in her clean uniform, feeling exposed under the bright lights. The mayor gave a speech. The fire chief gave a speech. Lily's parents gave an emotional thank you that had half the audience in tears. Then it was Rachel's turn to speak. She stepped up to the microphone, her hands gripping the podium so tightly her knuckles turned white. The crowd was watching her expectantly, cameras flashing, recording every moment. "Thank you," she started, her voice barely steady. "I appreciate all of this, but I really just did what anyone would have done. When you hear a child in danger, you don't think. You just act. I'm grateful Lily is safe, and that's what matters most." She meant to say more, had even prepared a few more lines, but suddenly she couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot. All those eyes on her, all those cameras recording, broadcasting, spreading her face across the internet, across the news, across everywhere. "Excuse me," she mumbled, and walked off the stage. She could hear the confused murmurs from the crowd as she pushed through the side door and into a hallway. Her supervisor followed her out. "Rachel, you okay?" "I'm fine. I just need some air. You seemed really anxious up there. Is everything all right?" Rachel nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yes, I'm just not good with crowds. Can I go now, please?" Her supervisor studied her face for a moment, concern evident in his expression. "Yeah, sure. Get some rest." But rest wasn't what Rachel needed. What she needed was for all of this to go away. Among the crowd of reporters covering the ceremony was Michael Hayes, a journalist for one of the regional newspapers. Unlike the others who were focused on the feel-good hero story, Michael had noticed something off about Rachel's behavior. The way she'd rushed off stage, the way she avoided cameras, the way she seemed almost afraid of the attention. Most people would chalk it up to humility or shyness. But Michael had been a reporter for 15 years, and his instincts were telling him there was more to the story. That evening, he sat at his computer and started digging. Rachel Torres, 28 years old, park ranger for 7 years. Clean record. No criminal history. No social media presence beyond a barely used account. No digital footprint before 7 years ago. That was weird. Everyone had a digital footprint these days. High school photos, college posts, old profiles. But Rachel Torres seemed to have appeared out of thin air 7 years ago. Michael leaned back in his chair thinking. People who erased their digital past usually had a reason. He started searching differently, looking for name changes in the state records, sealed files, anything that might explain the gap. It took him 3 days, but he found it, a sealed juvenile record. The seal wasn't perfect, though. There were fragments, pieces of information that had slipped through the cracks. References to a case from 15 years ago, and a name that made Michael's eyes widen, Jennifer Hartwell. That name rang a bell. Michael pulled up old news archives and started reading. His jaw dropped as the pieces fell into place. Meanwhile, Rachel was trying to return to normal life. She'd gone back to work, hoping that people would move on to the next viral story. But everywhere she went, people recognized her. Strangers would stop her on the street to shake her hand. Kids pointed at her. Someone asked for her autograph. It was suffocating. On Wednesday evening, exactly 1 week after the rescue, Rachel's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, distorted like someone was using a voice changer. "Jennifer, we know who you are." Rachel's blood ran cold. "What? Who is this? Did you think you could hide forever? Did you think changing your name would make it all go away?" The line went dead. Rachel stood there, phone trembling in her hand. They knew, someone knew. After all these years of running, of hiding, of building a new life, someone had figured it out. She sank onto her couch, her mind racing. Should she run? Change her name again? Move to another state? But she'd built a life here. She had a job she loved, colleagues who'd become friends. She'd finally found a place where she belonged. But that phone call meant it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The next morning, Michael Hayes sat in his editor's office, laying out what he'd discovered. Her real name is Jennifer Hartwell, daughter of Elizabeth and Robert Hartwell. Does that ring any bells? The editor's eyes widened. The charity fraud case? That was huge. Those people stole millions. Exactly. Their daughter was all over the news at the time. She was 13. Appeared in all their promotional videos for the fake cancer charity. When her parents were arrested, the media tore into the whole family. The girl got death threats, had to change schools multiple times. And you think our hero ranger is that girl? Michael nodded. The timeline matches. The age matches. Jennifer Hartwell disappeared from public record right around the time Rachel Torres appeared. Same state, different county. The editor leaned forward. This is big, Michael. But we need to be careful. She was a minor when her parents committed those crimes. She's a victim in all this too. I know. But people have a right to know who they're celebrating as a hero. What if there's more to the story? What if she knew what her parents were doing? She was 13. Still, this is news, real news. Not just a feel-good story about a brave ranger. There's depth here, complexity. The editor was quiet for a moment, weighing the ethics against the story. Finally, he nodded. Write it. But make sure you're fair. Give her a chance to comment. Michael left the office and immediately tried to reach Rachel for comment. He called her personal number, which he'd obtained through his research. It rang and rang, but she didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Ms. Torres, or should I say Ms. Hartwell, this is Michael Hayes from the Tribune. I'd like to speak with you about your past and give you an opportunity to tell your side of the story before we publish. Please call me back. Rachel listened to the voicemail 3 times, each time feeling more trapped than the last. It was over. Everything she'd built, everything she'd worked for was about to be destroyed. She thought about that little girl, Lily, safe with her parents. She thought about the satisfaction she'd felt pulling her from that burning house. For one perfect moment, she'd been exactly who she wanted to be. Someone who helped people, someone who mattered. But now the world was about to remember her as someone else entirely. The daughter of thieves, the face of a massive fraud, the girl who'd smiled in those videos while her parents stole from people's kindness. Rachel sat in her quiet apartment and waited for her world to fall apart to Michael. Hayes published his article on Friday morning. The headline was carefully chosen. Wildfire Hero's Hidden Past. Ranger who saved child is daughter of notorious con artists. Within an hour, it had spread everywhere. Rachel woke up to find her phone completely overwhelmed. Not with congratulations this time, with something much worse. Hundreds of messages. Thousands of comments. News vans were already gathering outside her apartment building again, but this time they weren't there to celebrate her. She read the article with shaking hands. Michael had been thorough. He'd dug up everything. Her real name, Jennifer Hartwell. Her parents, Elizabeth and Robert Hartwell, who'd created the Children's Hope Foundation 15 years ago. The charity that promised to help kids with cancer but instead funneled millions into their own pockets. And there she was. 13-year-old Jennifer smiling in those promotional videos, her face next to sick children who weren't really sick, her voice reading testimonials that weren't true. The innocent face that had made people trust the lie. Michael's article was actually quite fair. He pointed out that she'd been a minor, that there was no evidence she'd known about the fraud, that she'd been as much a victim as anyone, but he also asked the questions everyone would be asking. Did she know? Was the rescue genuine, or was it some kind of attention-seeking behavior learned from her parents? Could someone raised by such manipulative people really be trusted? Rachel sat there staring at her phone, watching her life unravel in real time. Social media exploded. Some people defended her. They said she'd been a child, that she couldn't be held responsible for her parents' crimes. But they were drowned out by the others, the angry ones, the ones who remembered donating to Children's Hope Foundation, the ones who'd lost money, who'd felt betrayed, who wanted someone to blame. Like mother, like daughter, one comment read. She probably staged the whole rescue for attention, just like her parents staged that fake charity. How can we trust her? She's been lying about who she is for years. Get her out of that uniform. She doesn't deserve to wear it. The comments went on and on, thousands of them, each one another nail in the coffin of her new life. By noon, the story was national news. Every major outlet picked it up. Cable news shows debated whether she should keep her job. Online forums argued about whether children of criminals could ever escape their parents' shadows. Someone found the old promotional videos from the Children's Hope Foundation and posted them online. There was 13-year-old Jennifer, her voice sweet and sincere, talking about the importance of helping sick children. Knowing now that it was all fake made it so much worse. Some people analyzed her body language, claiming they could see the deception even back then. Others felt sick watching an innocent child being used by her own parents. Rachel's supervisor called around 2 in the afternoon. His voice was heavy with regret. "Rachel, I'm sorry. We have to put you on administrative leave, just until this all blows over." "I understand," she said quietly. "It's not that we don't believe in you, but there's a lot of pressure right now. The mayor's office is getting calls. People are upset. We need to show that we're taking this seriously." I said I understand. "Rachel, for what it's worth, I don't think you did anything wrong. You were just a kid, but that didn't matter, did it?" The truth rarely mattered once the mob made up its mind. By evening, Lily's parents were facing questions too. Reporters showed up at their house asking how they felt about learning their daughter's rescuer was the daughter of criminals. Christopher and Amanda Chen sat in their living room, Lily playing in the next room, trying to process everything they'd learned. "I don't know what to think," Amanda said, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold. "She saved our daughter. She risked her life without hesitation. But she lied about who she was." "She didn't lie," Christopher corrected. "She changed her name." "That's different. That's legal. But she didn't tell anyone about her past, would you? If you'd been through what she went through?" Amanda was quiet for a moment. "Those videos, Chris, I watched them. That little girl in those videos, she looked so genuine, so sweet. What if it runs in the family? What if being able to lie convincingly is just something they can all do? That little girl in those videos became the woman who saved our daughter," Christopher said firmly. "I don't care what her parents did. I care what she did. And what she did was heroic." But Amanda couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling. She'd hugged that woman, cried on her shoulder, invited her into their lives. And all along she'd been someone else entirely. The next day, one of the morning news shows did a special segment. They brought in a psychologist to discuss whether children of criminals were more likely to become criminals themselves. They showed clips of the old trial, of Rachel's parents being led away in handcuffs while teenage Jennifer cried in the background. Then they showed the rescue video again, but this time with a different tone. Not celebrating her bravery, but questioning her motives. Was it genuine heroism, or learned behavior from parents who knew how to manipulate public emotion? The show invited guests with different perspectives. One was a victim of the Children's Hope Foundation fraud, a man who donated $10,000 believing it would help sick kids. "I lost my savings to those people," he said, his voice bitter. "And now I'm supposed to call their daughter a hero? I'm supposed to forget that she was part of it?" "She was 13, the host interjected. "She was old enough to know right from wrong. She was in those videos looking people in the eye and lying to them. We don't know that she knew it was a lie. Then where was she when her parents went to trial? Why didn't she testify? Why did she disappear and change her name if she had nothing to hide?" These were good questions. Questions Rachel had been asking herself for 15 years. Back in her apartment, Rachel watched the coverage with a strange sense of detachment. This was what she'd been afraid of all along. This was why she'd built walls around her past, why she'd avoided social media, why she'd panicked when that rescue went viral. Because she'd known that no matter how many years passed, no matter how much good she did, she would always be defined by what her parents had done. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "I hope you're happy. You got your attention, just like your parents taught you." Another buzz. "You should be in prison with them." And another. "Fraud runs in the family." Rachel turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her apartment. Outside she could hear the news vans, the reporters, all waiting for her to emerge so they could ask her questions she didn't know how to answer. The worst part wasn't the accusations or the anger. The worst part was that some of the questions were fair. She had been in those videos. She had smiled and talked about the importance of helping children while her parents pocketed the donations. And yes, she'd been 13, but shouldn't she have known something was wrong? That question haunted her more than any of the online comments. Should she have known? There were signs looking back. The expensive vacations her family took while claiming the charity was struggling. The way her parents coached her before filming. The strange meetings in their home office with the door locked. But she'd been a kid. She'd trusted her parents. Believed them when they said they were helping people. Was that naive? Or was that just what children do? The memories flooded back now. Memories she'd spent 7 years trying to bury. The day the FBI showed up at her school. The way her classmates looked at her after the news broke. The death threats that showed up in her locker. The way teachers whispered when she walked by. Her parents had tried to protect her during the trial, claiming she knew nothing. And that was mostly true. But the public didn't care. They saw a family of liars, and she was part of that family. She'd moved in with her grandmother after the trial. Sweet, quiet Grandma Helen, who lived 3 states away and never asked questions about the past. Helen had helped her legally change her name when she turned 18. Helped her apply to ranger training. Helped her build a new life. "You're not them," Grandma Helen had told her. "You get to choose who you become," and Rachel had chosen. She'd chosen to help people. To serve her community. To be someone who protected instead of someone who took. But now all of that was being questioned. Her motives. Her character. Her very right to the life she'd built. A rock crashed through her window around midnight, shattering the glass and sending shards across her living room floor. Wrapped around it was a note. "Con artists aren't welcome here." Rachel stared at the broken window and the rock on her floor. This was it. This was how it would end. Not with understanding or second chances. With rocks through windows and hatred and judgment. She'd saved a little girl's life, and it had cost her everything. The irony wasn't lost on her. The one moment in her life when she'd been purely, genuinely good, when she'd acted without thinking of the consequences or worrying about her past, that moment had been the one that destroyed her. Maybe her parents had been right after all. Maybe there was no such thing as genuine goodness. Maybe everything was just a transaction, a performance, a calculated move. Rachel sat among the broken glass and let herself cry for the first time since she was 13 years old. Next week was the longest of Rachel's life. The Park Service conducted an investigation into whether she'd falsified any information on her employment application. She hadn't, not technically. She'd legally changed her name before applying, so Rachel Torres was her real name by then. But people kept using the word deception anyway, as if she'd somehow tricked everyone by not announcing her past to every person she met. Online, the debate raged on. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, each one more elaborate than the last. Some people claimed the rescue was staged, that Lily's parents were in on it, that Rachel had somehow started the fire herself to create a heroic moment. Never mind that there was zero evidence for any of this. Once people decided you were a liar, they saw lies everywhere. The legitimate questions were hard enough without the conspiracy theories. News outlets dug deeper into her past, interviewing people who'd known her family before the scandal. Her old middle school principal, former neighbors, even some of the people who'd donated to her parents' fake charity. "I remember Jennifer," one woman told a reporter. "Sweet girl. Always so polite. That's what made it worse, you know? She seemed so genuine. Made you trust the whole family." The implication was clear. Rachel had always been good at making people trust her. Just like her parents. What hurt most was watching the opinions shift about the rescue itself. What had been seen as a spontaneous act of bravery was now being analyzed, dissected, questioned. The fire chief gave an interview defending her, saying she'd acted on instinct and that her rescue was absolutely legitimate. But even he had to admit he found it troubling that she hadn't been upfront about her past. By Wednesday, Rachel had stopped leaving her apartment entirely. She'd had the broken window repaired but kept the curtains drawn. Groceries were delivered. She ignored all calls except from her lawyer, who advised her to stay quiet and let the storm pass. "These things blow over," he said. "Give it a few weeks. Something else will happen, and people will move on." But Rachel didn't think she could survive a few weeks of this. Every day felt like being torn apart slowly. She'd written her resignation letter 3 times, but hadn't sent it yet. Part of her wanted to fight, to prove she deserved the life she'd built. But a larger part just wanted to disappear again. Maybe she'd move to Alaska, change her name again, find some remote place where nobody watched the news or cared about viral videos, start over for the 3rd time. On Thursday afternoon, something unexpected happened. Lily Chen, now home from the hospital and recovering well, asked her parents a simple question. Why doesn't the firefighter lady visit anymore? Amanda and Christopher exchanged glances. They'd been avoiding this conversation, unsure how to explain adult complications to a 6-year-old. "She's busy, sweetheart," Amanda said carefully. "But she saved me. I want to say thank you properly." I made her a picture. Lily held up a crayon drawing. It showed two stick figures, one big and one small, in front of a house with orange and red flames. The big figure was carrying the small one. Above it, in uneven child letters, it said, "Thank you for saving me." Amanda felt something crack in her chest. She'd been so caught up in the scandal, in the questions about Rachel's past, that she'd forgotten the most important thing. This woman, whoever she'd been before, whatever her parents had done, had saved her daughter's life. Christopher saw the same realization dawn on his wife's face. "We need to do something," he said quietly. "I know." That evening, Christopher and Amanda made a decision that would change everything. They called a local news station and requested an interview. The segment aired on Friday evening. The Chens sat on their couch, Lily between them, and spoke directly to the camera. "We've watched the coverage of Rachel Torres this week," Christopher began, "and we need to say something. This woman ran into a burning building to save our daughter. She didn't hesitate, didn't think about her own safety. She just acted," Amanda continued, her voice strong. "We've learned about her past, about her parents' crimes. And yes, we were shocked. But we've had time to think about it, and we realize we were wrong to question her. She was a child," Christopher said firmly. "A 13-year-old girl who got caught up in her parents' crimes through no fault of her own. And what did she do with the rest of her life? She became a park ranger. She spent 7 years serving her community. She saved our daughter." Lily held up her drawing to the camera. "I love the firefighter lady," she said simply. The interview went viral, but this time in a different way. Within hours, other voices started joining in. Rachel's co-workers from the Park Service issued a statement. In 7 years, Rachel had been involved in 12 rescue operations. She'd saved hikers, stopped illegal logging, and educated thousands of kids about fire safety. Her record was spotless. Her dedication was unquestionable. "We've worked alongside Rachel for years," her supervisor said in a video statement. "She's one of the best rangers we've ever had. What her parents did was terrible. But she's not her parents. Judge her by her actions, not by her last name." By Saturday morning, the tide was starting to turn. A psychologist appeared on one of the morning shows and talked about the lasting trauma experienced by children of convicted criminals. These kids carry incredible shame for crimes they didn't commit. Dr. Patricia Wong explained. They often change their names, avoid publicity, and struggle with trust. That's not suspicious behavior. That's trauma response. What we're watching happen to Rachel Torres right now is exactly why so many children of criminals struggle to build normal lives. But should someone in a position of public trust disclose something like this? The host asked. Disclose what exactly? That her parents committed crimes when she was in middle school. Should we require every applicant to detail their parents' criminal records? Where does it end? She legally changed her name. She passed all background checks. She's been an exemplary public servant. This isn't about public safety. This is about judgment and shame. More people began speaking up. Victims of the original Children's Hope Foundation fraud, who had every right to be angry, started posting online about the difference between holding criminals accountable and punishing their children. Elizabeth and Robert Hartwell stole from me, one man wrote. They deserve every day of their prison sentence. But their daughter? She was a kid. A victim just like the rest of us. Leave her alone. By Monday, several major news outlets published opinion pieces defending Rachel. They pointed out the absurdity of questioning a rescue that had been verified by multiple firefighters and caught on camera. They highlighted her years of service. They interviewed experts on childhood trauma, reformed identity, and the justice system. But the damage was done. Even as public opinion started to shift in her favor, Rachel couldn't unsee what she'd seen. Couldn't unread those comments. Couldn't forget how quickly people had turned on her, how easily they'd believed the worst. She sat in her apartment, watching the new coverage with the same detachment she'd watched the old coverage. People defending her now, calling her brave again, saying she deserved a second chance. But it all felt hollow, performative. Like the public had decided she was the villain and now they were deciding she was the hero. And none of it had anything to do with who she actually was. Her phone rang. It was her supervisor. Rachel, have you seen the news? Yeah. The investigation cleared you. No wrongdoing. And after the Chen family's interview, we've been getting calls from the community. People want you reinstated. The mayor wants to meet with you. This could all work out. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Rachel, did you hear me? You can come back. We want you back. I don't know if I want to come back. What? Why? Because a week ago everyone thought I was a fraud and a liar. Now they think I'm a hero again. And next week, who knows what they'll think. I can't live like this. Always one news story away from everything falling apart. Rachel, I know this has been hard, but you don't know. You can't know what it's like to have your entire life examined and judged by millions of strangers. To have people question your every action, your every motive. I saved a little girl because she needed saving. That's it. There was no hidden agenda. No calculated move. But I can't prove that, can I? I can't prove what was in my heart. Her supervisor didn't know what to say to that. Just take some time, he finally offered. Think about it. Your job will be here when you're ready. But Rachel wasn't sure she'd ever be ready. The thing about building a new life was that you could never quite trust it wouldn't collapse. And hers just had spectacularly in front of the entire country. She thought about Lily's drawing still being shown on the news. The simple gratitude of a child who didn't care about scandals or past names or complicated histories. She just knew someone had saved her life. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all that mattered. Or maybe Rachel was just too tired to fight anymore. Rachel spent the next 3 days alone in her apartment, thinking about everything that had happened. About the life she'd built and the life that had been taken from her 15 years ago. About the person she'd been trying to become and the person everyone else saw. On Wednesday morning, she made a decision. She called her supervisor back. I'll do one interview, she said. Just one. And then I want everyone to leave me alone. Can you make that happen? I'll try. Which outlet? I don't care. Someone fair. Someone who'll let me actually talk. The interview was scheduled for Friday afternoon, giving Rachel 2 days to prepare. She didn't write anything down or rehearse. She just thought about what she wanted to say, the truth she'd been carrying for 15 years. The journalist they chose was Rebecca Morrison, known for her thoughtful, in-depth interviews. She arrived at Rachel's apartment with just one cameraman, no crowd, no spectacle. Thank you for doing this, Rebecca said as they set up. I know it hasn't been an easy week. That's an understatement. Before we start, I want you to know that this is your chance to tell your story. Your way. I'm not here to ambush you or play gotcha. I genuinely want to understand, Rachel nodded. Okay. When the camera started rolling, Rebecca began with the simplest question. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about the day of the fire. Rachel talked about hearing the cry for help, about running into that burning house without thinking, about finding Lily and getting her out. It felt good to talk about it plainly without all the analysis and questioning. And when you came out, there were cameras everywhere. How did that feel? Rachel hesitated, then decided to be honest. Terrifying. Why? Because I've spent 7 years trying to be invisible. And suddenly I was the most visible person in the country. Why did you want to be invisible? This was it. The moment to tell the truth. Because when I was 13 years old, my face was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Rachel told the whole story. About growing up as Jennifer Hartwell. About her parents' charity that wasn't really a charity. About being in those promotional videos, believing she was helping sick kids, not knowing her parents were stealing from donors. I was 13, she said, her voice steady. I trusted my parents. Believed them when they said we were doing good work. I had no idea what was really happening until the FBI showed up at my school. That must have been traumatic. It destroyed my life. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. My parents weren't heroes. They were criminals. And everyone looked at me like I was one too. Were you? Involved in the fraud, I mean. No, I was a kid in some videos. That's it. I didn't know about the bank accounts or the fake financial statements or any of it. But nobody cared about that. They just saw my face associated with a crime, and that was enough. Rebecca leaned forward. What happened after your parents went to prison? I got death threats. Kids at school wouldn't talk to me. Teachers looked at me with disgust. I had to change schools 3 times in 2 years. Finally, I moved in with my grandmother in another state. When I turned 18, I legally changed my name. Not to hide, but to have a chance at a normal life. And you became a park ranger. I wanted to help people. For real this time. I wanted to be someone who protected instead of someone who took. For 7 years, that's exactly what I did. I loved my job. I was good at it. And nobody knew about my past, which meant nobody judged me for it. Until the fire. Until the fire, Rachel agreed. I didn't plan to become famous. I just heard a child crying and acted on instinct. But the moment that video went viral, I knew my old life would catch up with me. I knew someone would dig into my past and find out who I used to be. Did you consider coming forward yourself? Telling your story before someone else did? Rachel thought about that. Maybe I should have. But I was afraid. Afraid of exactly what happened. That people would question my motives. That they'd see me as my parents' daughter instead of as myself. And they did. They did. People said I staged the rescue. That I was seeking attention. That I couldn't be trusted because of my last name. It didn't matter that I'd spent 7 years serving my community. Didn't matter that multiple firefighters verified the rescue. People had decided I was a fraud just like my parents. How did that feel? Rachel's voice cracked slightly. Like being 13 again. Like no matter what I did, I'd never escape what my parents did. That I'd always be defined by their crimes. But public opinion shifted. The family you saved defended you. Your colleagues spoke up. People started recognizing that you were a victim too. I know, and I'm grateful for that, but it doesn't change what I saw. For a week, I watched people analyze my every action, question my every motive. I saw how quickly a mob can form. How easily people believe the worst about you if you've got the wrong background. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. What do you want people to know? If you could say one thing to everyone watching, what would it be? Rachel looked directly at the camera. I'm not my parents. I didn't choose them or their crimes, but I did choose who I became afterward. Every day for 15 years, I've tried to be a good person, to help people, to do the right thing. And I think I have. The day I pulled Lily out of that fire, I wasn't thinking about my past or seeking redemption or trying to prove anything. I just heard a child who needed help, and I helped her. That's who I am. That's who I've always tried to be. Do you regret saving her, given everything that happened afterward? No, Rachel said firmly. Never. Lily is alive. That's what matters. If I had to go through all of this again to save her, I would, in a heartbeat. Some things are more important than your own comfort or reputation. A child's life is definitely one of them. What's next for you? I don't know. I've been offered my job back. The community seems to support that. But I'm not sure yet. I need to figure out if I can live in a world where my past is public knowledge. If I can handle everyone knowing who I used to be. Do you think you can? Rachel smiled sadly. Ask me in a month. The interview aired that evening and was immediately picked up by every major news outlet. Clips were shared millions of times. But this time, the response was different. People saw Rachel not as a hero or a villain, but as a human being. Someone who'd been dealt a terrible hand as a child and had spent her adult life trying to do better. The interview was raw, honest, and vulnerable, in a way that viral videos and news sound bites could never capture. One comment on the video summed up the shift in perspective. We spent so much time asking if she deserved to be called a hero, that we forgot she actually saved a child's life. Whatever her past, whatever her name, she ran into a burning building for someone else's kid. That's all that should matter. The next morning, Rachel woke up to find flowers outside her door. Not from media outlets or politicians, but from regular people in her community. Notes thanking her for her service. Cards supporting her return to work. A teddy bear from a child who wanted the brave lady to know she was loved. Among the flowers was a hand-delivered envelope. Inside was Lily's crayon drawing, the one Rachel had seen on TV, along with a note from Christopher and Amanda. Rachel, we hope you'll come visit soon. Lily asks about you every day. She doesn't understand the complicated stuff, but she understands what matters. You saved her. You gave us our daughter back. Whatever name you go by, you'll always be a hero to our family. Thank you. Rachel held the drawing, looking at those uneven stick figures, the big one carrying the small one away from the flames. Such a simple image. Such a clear truth. She thought about her grandmother, who'd passed away 2 years ago, but who would have been so proud to see Rachel standing up for herself. She thought about the years she'd spent hiding, afraid of her past. She thought about that moment in the burning house when none of that mattered, when she was just a person helping another person. Maybe that's all any of us were, really. Just people trying to do our best with the circumstances we're given. Rachel picked up her phone and called her supervisor. I'm ready to come back, she said. That's great news. When can you start? Monday. But I have one condition. What's that? No ceremonies. No press conferences. No celebrations. I just want to do my job. Can we do that? Her supervisor laughed. Yeah, Rachel. We can do that. That weekend, Rachel visited the Chen family. Lily answered the door and threw her arms around Rachel's legs, chattering excitedly about how she'd watched the firefighter lady on TV. You were so brave, Lily said seriously. Just like a superhero. Rachel knelt down to Lily's level. You were pretty brave too, you know. You stayed calm and called for help. That's very smart. My teacher said you saved my life. I did, and I'm very glad I could. Why did people say mean things about you? Out of the mouths of children. The simplest, hardest questions. Sometimes, Rachel said carefully, people make mistakes, and sometimes other people have a hard time forgiving those mistakes. But the important thing is that we keep trying to do good things even when it's hard. Lily thought about this, then nodded seriously. Okay, want to see my room? I have a new dollhouse. And just like that, the complicated adult world faded away, and Rachel spent an hour playing dollhouse with the little girl she'd saved, while Christopher and Amanda watched from the doorway with grateful smiles. On Monday morning, Rachel put on her ranger uniform and drove to work. Some people stared, some whispered, but her colleagues welcomed her back with handshakes and pats on the shoulder, and within an hour she was back to doing what she loved. The story didn't end with everything perfect. Rachel still had hard days when she thought about her parents, about the life that might have been. She still struggled with trust, with opening up to people, with the fear that her past would always overshadow her present. But she also had good days. Days when she helped lost hikers find their way home. Days when she taught kids about fire safety and saw their faces light up with interest. Days when she remembered that she got to choose who she was, regardless of where she came from. 3 months later, Rachel was leading a group of school children on a nature walk when one of the kids asked, "Are you the lady who saved that girl from the fire?" Rachel smiled. "Yes, I am. That's so cool. I want to be a ranger when I grow up. That's a great goal. Work hard in school, take care of the environment, and always help people when you can. Even if it's scary? Especially if it's scary." The kid grinned and ran off to rejoin the group. Rachel watched them go. These children who saw her not as Jennifer Hartwell's daughter, or even as Rachel Torres, the controversial hero, but simply as a ranger. Someone who helped people, someone who protected the forest, someone worth looking up to. Maybe that's all any of us could hope for, to be seen for who we chose to become rather than where we came from, to have our actions speak louder than our histories, to save someone's life and have that mean exactly what it should mean, nothing more, nothing less. Rachel adjusted her hat and followed the group down the trail, ready for whatever came next.